Oz. The name on the street for the Oswald State Correctional Facility, Level 4. You may have heard on the news that we've been having a little tension around here. Well, after 14 fun-filled days of sitting in your cell, smelling your roomie's farts, a man is ready to forgive everybody for everything, just to come up for air.
Congratulations, America. This year, the prison population has reached an all-time high. 2 million. 2 million people are, what do you call it, incarcerated. 2 fucking million, that's the population of Vienna. That's the population of Houston, Texas. The US of A has 5% of the world's population, yet it has 25% of the world's prisoners. Whoopee! Now, most citizens would say 2 million inmates, I got no problem with that, because crime is down. But California, which increased its prison population at a much higher rate than, say, New York, had a smaller drop in crime. Cause and effect? I don't think so.
Shirley Bell.
The scariest part is, all those criminals that were locked into all those prisons in the 80s, you know, the good old Reagan years, all those criminals, their sentences are up. Those bad men who are more dangerous now than when they went in, they're getting out and coming to dark street corners near you.
Obituaries. A man or a woman lives their entire life. They work and love and dream and laugh and cry. Then they die.
And then somebody who they don't even know, who's never met them once, boils their entire life down to a paragraph or two in a local newspaper. And that's only if they've achieved something that the editor thinks is important. Now, if they're real movers, real shakers, maybe they get 2 columns. Maybe they get a photo from 1974. And if they've achieved nothing, they get buried at the bottom of the page, or ignored completely. I saw this obituary once of a guy I knew, and the newspaper had misspelled his name. They misspelled his goddamn motherfucking name. And that's it. It ain't no going back. It's not like they're gonna get his name right the next time he dies. No. That edition of the newspaper is going in the archives. And this guy I know, his name, which is probably the thing he's proudest of in life, it's gonna be wrong. Forever and ever. You gotta pity the guy who had one thing go wrong his whole life. I mean, other than that one thing that got fucked up, he led a good average life. But some incident or other, some bad decision or bad behavior, which maybe gained him a moment of notoriety, that'll be the headline, his obit when he dies. You know, like Charles Van Doren, quiz show scandal. No matter what else he's done, that's how he'll be remembered. Forever and ever. Ultimately, I guess it don't matter what they write in your obituary, because you ain't gonna be around to read it. Newsprint fades, paper turns to pulp. The mark you leave behind has to be deeper. The mark you leave behind has to be on another person's soul. The Bill of Rights. Those first 10 amendments to the Constitution, we invented them. Us. The US of A. Before our founding fathers dipped their quills into the inkwell and wrote the Bill of Rights, no other country had ever defined a government's responsibility to its people. The prime responsibility being to preserve liberty. Liberty! Of course, there are those who take all kinds of liberties with liberty. No person shall be held to answer for any capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of grand jury. Now, that's part of Article 5 of the Bill of Rights. The first 2 articles get all the press, you know.
freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the gun thing. But Article 5, baby, that's the one you gotta cling to when they slap on them cuffs. No person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against himself, nor deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Deprived of life. The right of the people to be secure in their person, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Article 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment. Cruel and unusual. In Oz, cruel is the usual punishment. The Declaration of Independence says that we are all of us due certain rights, the most important being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I mean, and isn't that what it's all about? Life, liberty, happiness. Mercy is the compassion we feel for someone else's misfortune. Mercy compels us to alleviate that misfortune. Mercy is a child of charity, but the sister of justice, because both are about the invisible link that exists between people. Mercy is spontaneous because misery is involuntary. Years and years and years ago, the Catholic Church made a list of all the ways we can show mercy. Feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, clothe the naked, shit like that. Another of them was ransom the captive. In those days, pirates and infidels and such would abduct fair maidens and Christian pilgrims. God-fearing people were expected to pay for their return. Who gets to ransom the captive in this day and age? Instead, we're expected to visit the imprisoned. That's right. Come on down. To instruct the ignorant, counsel the doubtful, to admonish the sinners. In order for these works of mercy to happen, you need two things: someone in distress and someone with the capacity to help them. In other words, an ignoramus can't instruct another ignoramus, and a sinner can't admonish a sinner. The final act of mercy, to bury the dead, to pray for the dead and the living. We are merciful, not just for humanitarian reasons. We are merciful because we ourselves want to be saved. God expects mercy from us. God demands it. And how much mercy does he show us? Kyrie eleison. That means, Lord, have mercy. Christ, have mercy. Please. Some big high ruler once said, the business of America is business. I'm happy to report the criminal justice business is booming. With heavy industry headed south, small towns are battling for state contracts to build correctional facilities. Who'd have thunk it? Nice, upstanding citizens begging to have rapists, drug dealers, and murderers right in their own backyard. 7 out of 10 inmates are from cities, but 90% of the prisons themselves are in rural areas. You know, farmlands, hillsides, forests. Now you'd think such bucolic surroundings would have a calming effect on those inside. But no. Out in the wild, things only get wilder. The Census Bureau counts prisoners just like they count everybody else. But the Census Bureau considers prisoners as residents of the township where the prison is located, not where they lived before they got convicted. So what, you say? The state uses these numbers to determine where financial aid like poverty funds is spent. Some rinky-dink town upstate gets a big fat check, while the inner city, where the money would keep people from committing crimes, gets zippity-doo-dah. The census is senseless. Those census numbers I was talking about, they're also used to determine election districts. A senator from a white rural area with a prison can count the inmates as his constituents and therefore increase his political influence. Those inmates, who are largely of color, aren't allowed to vote. The senator has no allegiance to them at all. In fact, he benefits by voting for laws to keep them incarcerated longer. The town benefits by the increased prison population. Yeah, everybody benefits. There's all kinds of slang words for prison. The joint, the slammer, the big house. But my personal favorite is the clink. That's because the word comes from the sound that chains made back in the 1400s. They had these big-ass motherfucking iron chains. The prisoners weren't allowed to talk, so when they moved around the dungeon, all you heard was clink.
People in love sometimes say that they're head over heels, but if they knew what the phrase really meant, I'm not sure that they'd make the claim. Back in the bad old days, as a warning to criminals, judges would order malcontents to be hung by their ankles, heels over head. The phrase came to mean a state of helplessness, confusion. Now that I think on it, that is being in love.
For centuries, part of any punishment was humiliation. In England, they'd hang a criminal inside a cage a few feet off the ground in the middle of the town square. The guilty fuck sat in his cage looking like a canary, like a parakeet. So people started calling them jailbirds. Only the kind of chirping we do in Oz ain't all that pretty. A long time ago, if a man stole another man's cow or lamb or pig and butchered it, and was found with the animal's blood on his fingers, he was said to be caught red-handed. Of course, if the robber was too cocky to wash his hands, maybe he deserved to get busted. To seal one's fate. Years ago, the death sentence could not be carried out unless the death warrant had the judge's official seal affixed to the bottom. Imagine. The only thing standing between you and death is a little lump of melted wax. But that's the thing about life. The big changes all come because of little lumps of wax. The criminal mind. For the past 200 years, scientists, sociologists, and other folks who fret about such things have debated whether a person commits a violent act because of their environment or their biological makeup. What turns on the red crime light in a man's brain? If we find the cause, can we eliminate the effect? Can we end violence now and forever? There's a new study out which claims that some people are wired to commit violent crimes, that they have defects in their brain, that they have less gray matter in their prefrontal lobe. Just behind the eyes, they're missing the piece that keeps rage inside. If true, those people are predestined to rape and murder. They cannot be held accountable. Anatomy is destiny. Everybody's always looking for an excuse. I killed that man because A, I was abused as a child, B, I had shitty parents. C, I was raised in poverty. D, all of the above. If the only thing you know from the cradle on up is violence, what other choice have you got? Fuck! Shit! What other reason do you need? Genetics or environment. Like in everything else, society searches for the magic bullet, the easy answer. Because the more complex the answer is, the more terrified we become. Is the root of violence much deeper, much darker? How about pure evil? Maybe we human creatures are inherently evil. Maybe evil is ingrained, embedded in our souls. Philip Wilson used to joke, "The devil made me do it." Maybe he was right. Or maybe not. Back in the 1950s, there was a game show on TV called You Bet Your Life, hosted by Groucho Marx. Every week, Groucho would ask inane questions and insult the contestants. A fake duck would drop down on a string, and Groucho would go,
"Say the secret word and win $100.
But not once did anyone ever actually bet their life. Unlike in Oz, no one ever put their life on the line. There's nothing like the thrill of gambling. Nothing compares to that incredible feeling of anticipation. You wait breathlessly for the roll of the dice, for the spin of the wheel, for the flip of the card. You wait to see what fortune fate will hand you. Everybody gambles, from a card shark in Atlantic City to an old lady scratching out a lottery ticket. Taking a chance, risking it all. That's as basic a human need as food, clothing, shelter. That's as fundamental to our genetic makeup as killing thy neighbor.
Speaking.
Winning and losing, the two sides of the same silver dollar. But winning isn't always a good thing. Think on it. You suddenly come into a lot of cash. You start worrying about how to spend it, how to save it, invest it. You buy all the stuff you don't really need, and you get weighed the fuck down. Losing, on the other hand, has a kind of purifying effect. When you got nothing, when you're stripped of all the doodads in life, you're free. Lots of Native Americans, aka Indians, used to live on reservations in utter poverty. Alcoholism was rampant, morale was low. Then some chief got the brainstorm idea to use the land not to hunt buffalo, but to raise money by building a casino. Then faster than you can say Custer, the lives of the members of the tribe changed for the better. So you see, sometimes you can eliminate your own vices by exploiting the vices of others. Oz. The name on the street for the Oswald State Correctional Facility, Level 4. Now in Oz, our entire day is structured. We know when we'll eat, sleep, work, when we'll have free time. Now giving a man who's locked up free time, it's a joke. Because there are still all kinds of restrictions as to what you can and cannot do. Some people try to better themselves by reading or exercise. Some pray. Some plot. Some just watch TV. Television is a medium rarely well done. My Uncle Bilbo said that. Okay, somebody said it first, but my Uncle Bilbo was the first one to say it to me. Now, don't get me wrong. I love watching the news on TV. Dan and Tom and Peter and maybe a little Jim Lehrer if I'm feeling brainy. I flip back and forth between news shows in hopes of catching the same story, because each news show tells a story a different way. ABC leaves out a fact that CBS makes a big deal of. CBS interviews its expert who totally disagrees with NBC's expert. NBC goes in depth, while ABC gives the same story 5 seconds airtime. You see, I think if I catch all three versions, maybe combined, I get a little taste of the truth. Journalists are supposed to be impartial. They're supposed to keep their personal opinions to themselves. However, on TV, we know what the reporter is feeling.
We see Sam Donaldson or Andrea Mitchell giving us the facts, but with the camera that close up, we can also tell by a raised eyebrow, by a tiny inflection, what they really think about the person who they're reporting on.
Now, Walter Cronkite, he had the poker face. Nobody ever knew what old Walt was thinking. So while he was telling the truth, he was also lying to the camera. That's genius.
Yo. Television has the power to enlighten, to inform, to lay the bare truth before the eyes of the public. Television is an extraordinary gift, as much a miracle from God as Lazarus rising from the dead. But do we use the gift wisely? Have we ever?
Every person on the planet was raised to believe some version of the truth about God, about morality, mortality, about the purpose of life. We usually call those beliefs religion. And if over the course of living, those beliefs break down, if they prove themselves not to be true, we search for a new religion to follow, and we convert. Now that conversion can be traumatic, not only for ourselves, our souls, but for those around us. When Christopher Columbus landed in the New World, a Catholic priest was right alongside him. From then on, priests kept coming over to this continent trying to convert the Indians, trying to get them to kiss the crucifix, to stop smoking peyote, to cover up their nakedness. The Indians responded with great enthusiasm. They maimed, tortured, and burned the priests, and then offered the bodies up to their own gods. Saul was a soldier, riding his horse to Damascus, when all of a sudden he saw a huge cross in the sky. Instantly, he changed the first letter of his name to P, becoming Paul. Why? I don't know. Most of us ain't that lucky, seeing a cross in the sky. For most of us, signs from God aren't quite that clear. Any convert, whether he goes from communist to capitalist or from 6 packs a day to smoke-free, ends up condemning his former practices. Because those beliefs didn't work for him, they can't work for anybody. His vision becomes narrow, blinded by the light. Whether he's transformed into a Hindu or joins AA, he becomes a fanatic, if you ask me. It's the fanatics who fuck up the world. It's the fanatics who think they got God on their side. The rest of us, we don't need divine light. In the dark of night, all we want is enough light so that we don't stub our toe on the way to the toilet. Most prisons manufacture things: license plates, clothes, computer chips. In ours, we do one thing better than anybody: revenge. Yeah, we churn out revenge with greater precision than a Ford assembly line. We're world renowned. And I'm happy to say, for us, revenge is a growth industry. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. That's right. According to the Bible, revenge is the exclusive property of God Almighty. But if God admits to using revenge, and if God can only do good, does that mean revenge is good? Does that mean if we are made in God's image, then revenge becomes not an act of hate, but a holy crusade? A blessed thing? My Uncle Bilbo once said, revenge is a dish best served cold. Meaning, I guess, if the person plotting revenge goes into it all hot and lathered, he's likely to go home hungry. But the guy who approaches his goal with a cool, clear eye, he has himself a feast. Bon appetit. Last year, the Hatfields and the McCoys, 2 families who've been feuding for something like 150 years, sat down together and made peace. Imagine that. Giving up all that hate after all those years. Some people think the whole brouhaha started over a stolen pig, though there are those who swear the feud was over a woman. When you take revenge on somebody, you're actually paying them the highest compliment possible. It's like saying, you've affected my life to such an extent that I must reciprocate. I must affect your life as deeply as you have mine. Revenge may be the ultimate Hallmark card. Yeah. When you think of it like that, the cliche is true. Revenge is sweet. In ours, you have to be ready to defend yourself at any given moment. chances are the person coming at you has a weapon, so you gotta have one too. You gotta be ready to kill your enemies, or at least slow them down. Now, this shank, which we call the Gillette bayonet, is not designed to pierce, but to slice. The blade of a disposable razor is extracted from its plastic casing and then attached to a pen or a pencil. Only, the danger with this sucker is, you end up cutting yourself. This particular shank is called the blunt. It's fairly standard. A prisoner palms a hunk of metal working in the shop and then rubs the metal against the stone wall. In ours, we got plenty of those, shaping it into a blade. The beauty of this baby is that it causes as much internal damage as possible. This shank is a classic. The bottom end of a toothbrush is carved down to its sharpest point, almost like an arrowhead. But the best part is, the weapon doesn't have to be concealed. It can be placed in a pocket. Bristles show it, ready to be grabbed for action. And then there's the Don Juan. You take a spring from the frame underneath your bed, uncoil it, and then sharpen the edge. The wound itself is smaller, but goes much deeper. Like Don Juan, it penetrates. The worst stab wound is the one to the heart. Sure, most people survive it, but the heart is never quite the same. There's always a scar, which is meant, I guess, to remind you that even for a little while, someone made your heart beat faster. And that's a scar you can live with, proudly, all the days of your life. A blizzard is coming, y'all. Heaps and heaps of snow will fall from the sky and bury everything. Sidewalks, cars, houses. The ground will grow frozen and slippery, dangerous. But here in Oz, we're oblivious to the weather outside. Here in Oz, we're all toasty, cozy, and warm. Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Currier and Ives, Norman Rockwell. They created images of America in winter. Ice skating on a lake, sleigh rides along a country road, fluffy white crystals of new fallen snow. Maybe there was a time when life was idyllic, and children didn't go to school and kill other children. We see the paintings now and we grow nostalgic. Nostalgic for a place we've never seen. We long for a time that we've never actually been part of. Fahrenheit and Celsius, two ways of measuring the same thing. Of course, most of the world is on Celsius, but we Americans remain defiantly committed to Fahrenheit. We'd like to learn the other way. We'd like to change, but we just can't seem to accept that 0 degrees is actually warmer than we think. When I was a kid, I used to love reading Jack London. You know, Call the Wild, White Fang. I remember one story where a man was in the middle of Alaska or somewhere isolated and cold. He'd lost his dog team, his legs were broken. He realized he was going to freeze to death. So he buried himself in the snow and simply went to sleep. Terrifying, and yet beautiful. Acceptance of one's fate, the way any man should die. They say that every snowflake is different, but how can they really be sure? I mean, think about all the snowflakes that have fallen all over the world throughout Earth's history. Law of averages dictates that at least 2 of them had to be similar. Like human beings, like the men in Oz. Even if they start out unique, they end up the same. Back in the old Greek times, there lived a man named Orpheus. Loved his wife. Took it easy on the ouzo. Played a mean guitar. Upstanding guy. So what the almighty gods do? They fucked with him. Made his life Hades. Why? Because that's what those in power do to those of us with none. So, Orpheus' wife's strolling along, gets bitten by a snake, and dies. Orpheus freaks out and heads down into the underworld to demand that his lady be returned. And some goddess says, okay, on one condition. If you look at her before you get back to Earth, she'll disappear. With like 10 feet to go, motherfucker turns around. And wifey's sent right back to hell. Orpheus should have known better. You don't fuck with the gods. So, Orpheus returns to Earth, alone, sad, and what happens? Do the townspeople console him? Fuck no, they blame him for his failure and tear him to bits, literally. Then they throw his organs in the river. All this because he let his family down, because he took one last look at someone he loved. The gods don't have a sentimental bone in their bodies. Myths are supposed to teach us something. But what's the life lesson in this sad tale of Orpheus? No good deed goes unpunished? Fuck that. Ain't no such thing as a good deed. Love conquers all. Never has. Never will. Maybe the moral of the story is that those in power are just as fucked up as those who ain't, and the worst thing a body can do is give up his or her own power to some buttheads on Mount Olympus, because if they're so fucking powerful, how'd they let us get away with all this shit in the first place? Answer me that. Competition brings out the best in people. That's what they say. When the game is on the line, a true sportsman wants the outcome to rest on his shoulders. The logic being, you make the winning play, you walk away a hero. Of course, if you fuck up, you're the GOAT. Problem with competition here in Oz is, we mostly got goats. Vince Lombardi once said that winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. But the one thing Lombardi held in higher regard than winning was character. In fact, without character, there'd be no victory. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of his players would miss curfew, cat around, get jiggy, but they always knew where to draw the line. That's right. A good man knows where to draw the line. If athletes learned to control their tempers, to control their rage, then hockey players wouldn't do time in the penalty box. Basketball players wouldn't draw technical fouls. Football players wouldn't be penalized 15 yards. Of course, if athletes did control their rage, nobody be interested in sports. The punching, choking, kicking, biting, screaming, that's what the fans go to see. More and more these days, you pick up a newspaper and some athlete's name is in the headline. Not on the sports page, but for getting into trouble with the law. I'm never surprised. The adrenaline it takes to be a superstar is the same as the rush you feel committing a crime. When the game's over, it's hard to put a cap on that. Hard to go back to being ordinary. In any sport, to experience victory, the one element you need more than any other is teamwork. But teamwork is also the scariest notion a person can face. Joining a team means giving up part of your individuality, being willing to make whatever sacrifice is necessary for the greater cause. If you're willing to do these things to truly become a team player, then success will follow. But a word of caution. Be sure that the success you go after is the success you need. I've been wondering something. From the time we learn to speak until the day we die, how many words does the average person say? I mean, we talk and talk and talk, filling up the ozone, secretly hoping that in all those syllables, we've said something worth remembering. Deep down, we know the truth. Most of what we say is trash. When someone dies, we look at the last thing he or she said in hopes of finding a summation of life, a deep truth that those of us above ground can cling to. Like the novelist, Daniel Defoe. I do not know which is more difficult, to live well or to die well. In Oz, we do neither. The last three words spoken by Jesus were, "It is finished." Now, being the Son of God, he probably knew the end was coming and had a chance to consider what to say. The rest of us don't get that luxury. When death comes, it's a surprise, and we gotta improvise. Not everybody leaves this mortal coil miserable and confused. Ethel Waters said, "I'm not afraid to die, honey. In fact, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I know that the Lord has his arms wrapped around this big fat sparrow." In 1955, James Dean said to a friend, "My fun days are over." An hour later, his car crashed and he was dead. A self-fulfilling prophecy? Or just bad luck? I want to go back to my old home before I die. I asked the Great White Father to allow me to go back, but he said no. Geronimo. Maybe what we say when we go is less important than what's said about us. When you die, what's the nicest thing someone will utter about you? What's the worst? Somewhere in between is who you are. Or maybe mere words aren't enough to define a life. Maybe only one's actions can.